Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight. I'm your host, Alexis Soto, joined by Peter Martinez. We are recording this podcast here on Red Spotlight, of course, the place that brings you all the latest stuff coming out of the world of movies and more. And yes, that is an airplane flying over me while I'm recording, so perfect freaking timing here. We're recording this podcast on the eve of the Academy Awards, which of course is the biggest night as far as this space that we cover and devote so much of our meaningless lives to, it seems like. And of course, because of who is nominated, more so than any of the other years, it seems like some of us are far more invested than we otherwise would be. And we're going to get into how we feel things are going to shape up, and also maybe some insight into perhaps why things might be that way. And of course, whatever else strikes our fancy here on Red Spotlight number 4. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. 430. 436. I don't know why I wrote down 346. It is. Hold on a minute.
I feel like we've done 436 before.
Yeah, we're at fourth. No, this is for sure 436. I wrote down 346 on my paper here, but it's actually 436.
Dyslexic.
I'm not usually, but maybe I have been my whole life, and I'm only just now discovering it. Who knows, you know? Oftentimes when you live under Hispanic households, you're not necessarily tested out to see what you have as far as mental disabilities are concerned, unless it's made abundantly obvious. I was nearsighted for practically all of my life. I didn't get glasses until 7th grade.
This explains a lot. I think I would throw in a couple of other disorders, but yeah. I
mean, I'm not denying that they're not currently a part of who I am, but I think you have noticed that I've I have a lot of things that are a part of me that aren't necessarily treated, or I guess maybe even at all acknowledged, but yeah. That's how we are here. Anyway, listen, so I want to get into this Oscar stuff, and that's obviously what we're here to discuss here. But I just can't help but take a couple of moments here to relish something. Yes, just real quick. Wait,
real quick. I have an orange ASMR. Okay, go.
How could we not? For the first time in, I think maybe ever, we're kind of in a particular fascinating moment where the self-proclaimed king of Disney, Bob Iger, doesn't really know what to do when both of his two right hands are kind of seemingly like coming apart at the seams, Star Wars and Marvel. And I touched on this last week with David. And you and I know him too. You and I have spent such a long time these last few years, kind of, I feel, dissecting what the problems are with both of those franchises. And Disney is a big part of what's wrong with both of those franchises, you know, in terms of like what they expect and what they want out of their output, right? But right now is a particularly precarious time. I'm much more interested in the Marvel stuff because I want to, like, you know, kick them.
This actually, I was gonna send you something.
Yeah,
this kind of goes along with it. Let me send it.
Of course, yeah. Go ahead and take your time to do that. I wanted to kick them more so because I have been wanting this for a while now. That's the message. By the way, have you heard it? I've been wanting this for a while.
His phone.
I don't know what it is here. So CEO Bob Iger wants to look again at distributing content across all channels, including legacy home entertainment, i.e. physical media. What am I reading here? Which at one point was extremely lucrative at our company as opposed to loss-making. This is not... Is this real?
I sent it.
Well, I mean, just to be clear here, I know you and I... For those of you listening, we're big fans of physical media here on... At least Peter and I are. This is out of left field. And I think it also suggests streaming perhaps isn't the biggest cash cow that people thought it would be. Bob Iger, I love the man on some level, but you know what? He's made a lot of mistakes and he needs to be called out on it. Betting the farm on streaming is a big fucking mistake, number one. Choosing Bob Chapek to succeed him was mistake number two, because I think we're only beginning to see the extent to which Chapek just fucking ruined everything, not the least of which includes damning the brand that is animation as far as getting theatrical, availability in theaters. They're not making money anymore. Those animated films in theaters.
It's
so
like
many
a
problems.
return to the 90s.
Right?
Almost.
The idea that Bob Iger, the man that was like, you know what, I'm going to usher in this new era of streaming, and that all the studios and distributors followed, the idea that he is now just saying, you know what, maybe we need to look back at, of all things, physical media? What?
You know why? Because to date, Netflix has yet to be profitable. These streamers, and I know this blows people's minds, they're not profitable. And I don't know if you ever saw it. You probably did. You probably shared it. Matt Damon would talk about home media.
On Hot Ones. I think he made a Hot Ones appearance.
Yeah, it was on Hot Ones. And he would talk about the reason why so many movies were able to get made was because home media was like a second box office. You would make so much, it's a second life for the film. You would make so much more money through the physical media release.
I even discussed this recently. I went into a whole, I think it was a good 10 minutes on a recent podcast I did. And I discussed how even in TV, shows like Family Guy and Futurama were revived because of the sales on physical media.
And I think what's happening is, especially as so much money has been poured into these streaming services, and they're starting to realize we're not getting returns.
We're just losing.
They're thinking like, well, why did we leave behind physical media? We used to get a whole second kick of a whole second kick of money back when we would release it physically.
It almost could be considered an encore run, basically.
Yeah, it's an encore box office run, basically. And I think it'll probably take some time. You might see an attempt of a revival of that. And it's you have to see how it goes, right? But I really don't think streamers are the future the way people thought. It honestly, it could be that we look back on this whole streaming culture, this 10, 20, 15 year time of
as a fad, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be interesting? You know what? I have to say, we haven't discussed this topic in a while here, but and mostly because it's been depressing. But I don't think that's a negative thing, and quite frankly, it makes me feel somewhat at ease a little bit that because when COVID first hit, and there were a lot of good reasons to why we were all panicking, was theatricality not being as lucrative or as marketable, obviously in a pandemic time. But there have been a lot of really negative aspects to everything going streaming, not the least of which include, particularly from the perspective of creators and filmmakers and writers and directors who make these, whether it be a sitcom or a drama, if you don't get those hits, those clicks on the first few days or the first few weeks, you're done and move on to the next thing if you get a next project. And then that doesn't even get into Zaslav, or what is being called as the axe of Zaslav, where he's just deleting things off of the face of the earth, and which has seemingly Netflix is also following in suit and in tone. So there's just a lot of disturbing aspects that have emerged because of streaming, and the idea that it is not being as profitable, and perhaps in the future, if we look back on this as a fad, I don't find that objectionable at all. It might actually be a welcome sigh of relief, because there are some things, the directions in which we're heading as far as this business is concerned, that is freaking the fuck out of me out.
It kind of feels like streaming is built on a house of cards. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of starting to fall a little bit.
And I think what I feel like perhaps one of the biggest one of the biggest examples of this that you can point to is that not just streaming is like a house of cards beginning to fall, but you kind of get the impression so is Disney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
they're losing it.
That's amazing to see. I love Disney. I will always love Disney for the stories that they have contributed throughout, all of our lives. But the 2010s was perhaps the biggest they might ever be. And the success of which they saw, I think they released $5 billion grossing films respectively in 2019. That perhaps was the peak of their powers.
Yeah.
It was insane. And, not for nothing still. I mean, they're still the biggest name in town in terms of certain,
for sure.
They're not necessarily on the, at the bottom of the pecking order, but they're beginning to trip over themselves in ways we didn't think would happen this quickly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the obvious one is Star Wars.
Yeah.
But that's been going on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where they don't even release films anymore. And the shows, save one, I think are pretty disappointing. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe you have to wait for the Nelson ratings or whatever the fuck they're called. But I feel like this season of The Mandalorian, 2 episodes in, people are not as it's not, it doesn't feel as much as an event.
Right. Full cards on the table. Again, for those who are not aware, we do not like The Mandalorian. However, we can't, of course, deny its popularity.
Hit. Yeah, oh my God.
And its cultural significance. Mm-hmm. And with that comes the It streaming girl. It's the It girl, basically. It was at one point, because it was the first big streaming show on Disney+. It debuted with The Mandalorian. It kind of caught this win where it united Star Wars fans. Personally, I don't put that much stock in uniting Star Wars fans for whatever that's worth, but people do, so there was that. But except, of course, it didn't unite us because it united us in our hatred for it, basically. We don't like that show here on Red Spotlight. But what is different now is we're 2 episodes into this brand new season and no one's talking about it. And I think a lot of people don't even know that it's there. And I asked David this question last week, because it was apparent from the first episode, and now even more so in the second episode, it is not, people's attention are not gravitated toward that show any longer. Once, you could say it was a fluke, but 2 weeks in a row, considering the kind of fanfare this show is used to attracting, there's a problem. And I was trying to figure out, what's behind all of this? Was the marketing off-putting people because they brought back Grogu, and if you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, perhaps you'd be like, what the fuck? I thought this character was written off. And was it perhaps that the second season already wrote an emotional high of a finale? Maybe it's been gone too long. Is it the Andor factor, which hilariously enough, a lot of trades have been, running headlines with, is Mandalorian just not good anymore because of how great Andor was, even though most people didn't watch Andor?
Yeah, no one saw Andor.
So it's funny to see how the media now is treating it as this big success when, a lot of fans are kind of ambivalent toward it, it looks like. So there's a lot of factors that are going on here that I quite am not sure what's really the one thing that's driving this. But I am sure that I'm happy and I'm here for that, because I think Jon Favreau, of all people, he needs to be taken down a peg. And I think if anything else, Andor, the idea that Andor perhaps is exposing how empty and vapid and surface level Jon Favreau's writing is, or that whole show, quite frankly, is, I'm here for that. I don't know what your thoughts are to this whole situation.
Honestly, I think that's the thing that's kind of hurt, because I don't think people are angry about this season, right? When it comes to The Mandalorian, I don't think people are I don't think there's any one issue. I just think it's such a empty show, and it's finally caught up with it. Right? Yeah. Because I'll see week to week, the way people talk about Andor, but even at the same time, the way people will discuss and talk about The Last of Us and stuff like that. And they'll talk about the performances and this and
David actually brought this point up last week with that. There were a lot of, this last year, there were a lot of great streaming shows, whether it be Peacemaker or Stranger Things or House of the Dragon, Andor, and now The Last of Us, a lot of big shows that attract a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the 2 episodes, but I'll look at okay, well, what are people talking about? And it's oh my god, the Darksaber. And it's it's you've already whipped that thing out. It's not gonna keep working, right? And it's oh my god,
member berries.
What's her name? Satan Bak.
Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan. And it's like, oh my gosh, Grogu was really cute in this scene. And I'm sure he was, right? But you need some meat on those bones. I'm sorry. Like, that. I honestly think it's just like, oh, this just doesn't cut it anymore, you know? Honestly, that's what I think it is. Because I'm sure it's still getting great rating, but it just feels like an overall, like, calming of whatever it is. But I mean, we're only 2 episodes in. I don't, but yeah.
I also have to think, like, yeah, Andor being the show that preceded this is not a great comparison.
It's not.
But
no.
I do wonder, because others have pointed this out, do you think the overall reactions or reception, more specifically, to the last year's Star Wars shows not named Andor, like Obi-Wan or Book of Boba Fett, did some damage to Star Wars streaming?
For sure. Because, again, remember...
Are you okay?
I was one of those people that was like I don't really like the Book of Boba Fett, but it's literally no different than The Mandalorian, especially season 2. So I don't get people's issues. And it was one of those things where
people were getting angry, though.
And I think it really highlighted and I think it's just kind of both consciously and subconsciously highlighted issues with that kind of Star Wars. And then Andor came in and was a real gut punch of like, oh, like it can be better. You know, you can actually tell an interesting story at the same time of showing me, you know, stuff I've seen before. And I think, honestly, that's the same thing that's happening to Marvel, where it's like people are like, well, I don't like this. And then me and you are like, it's practically no different from those other movies before that were hitting $1 billion marks.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's other blockbusters that come in and go like, oh, it can be better. And so now they're hurting too.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of that 1, 2, even 3 punch that's affecting really Disney as a whole, because I would even look at the animation sector. Because you look at this year, we had amazing blockbusters. And even, I mean, last year, but even this year, like, Scream made a lot of money. This is making
Scream
a lot of money this
and
weekend.
Creed.
Creed 3 is making a lot of money. Megan, all these other movies that used to just, I was like, yeah, like they're kind of fucked because of the
Marvel.
way movies are going.
Yeah, are
making more money again. And then you look at like the Tom Cruise movie,
Top Gun and Avatar. I think we kind of maybe had mentioned this earlier before, but I feel like what you're getting at is that perhaps out of nowhere, Top Gun and Avatar: The Way of Water maybe kind of did a cultural reset.
I think, like I said, it's that 1, 2, 3 punch of these things just aren't the same. They're not. I think people are. It's kind of exposing. They're slightly worse, but they're not different enough. But they are different enough to people where it kind of exposes the vapidness of what they've been watching, and then they see other movies that give a shit and actually try with the stuff that they're doing, and so they're like, oh, like, well, I'll just watch this. It's that slow sort of cultural shift thing going on.
No, it's really the culmination of a lot of things happening all at once, and color me surprised that we're actually here at this moment. But you know what? I just think, look, you and I are of the mind that this has been a long time coming. This is a reckoning. This is what happens when at every level you just refuse to change. And I think it's almost the same story again and again. And I don't know. I just like, hey, I just feel like saying I told you so to all those people that, just kept insisting how great the Marvel stuff, how great the Star Wars stuff was. It's just quite fascinating, honestly. It's the same story happening all across all their different sectors. And I'm wondering, like, if maybe Iger is regretting coming back because things are just exponentially getting worse.
If I'll put it this way, if he was someone that cared about his legacy, I wouldn't have come back.
But I would say that people were arguing he cared about his legacy. That's why he came back, because he felt that the successor he picked. Yeah.
But see, that's not true though, because I don't think the one he would be remembered as the golden boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once it went downhill, whoever was in charge, they would be remembered as the one who ended the dark, or who started the dark times. But he would always be remembered as the golden boy. If he comes back and he can't turn it around, which I don't think he's going to be able to turn it around, right? Because it's one of those things where, like with Marvel, I don't think it's not like they're going to ever stop making movies or stop being successful, but you're never going to reach those heights of that phase 2, phase 3 lead up type stuff. Especially starting with the first Avengers, it's just not going to happen. Mm-mm. You're not going to reach the heights of everyone being excited for a new sequel trilogy for Star Wars. You know, I mean, maybe you can go back with like animation. Can you reach the heights of when Frozen first came out and stuff like that? I mean, there's still great stuff I think that comes out for animation wise, but yeah, like you're out of live action remakes. You're not gonna hit Lion King numbers.
Right? I hope you're right, because tomorrow they are gonna drop that Little Mermaid trailer, and we'll see how it does. But you know what I am hopeful for? I'm thinking maybe there's a chance this doesn't make $1 billion, because it seems to be pretty unanimous that whatever images that have already been released of that movie have looked awful.
It's different now, because I mean, Wakanda Forever didn't make $1 billion. I thought that would make $1 billion.
You think it would? Easily.
Captain Marvel made $1 billion.
Yeah.
The sequel to Black Panther didn't. Ant-Man Quantumania made less than the original Ant-Man.
Is going to make less than the original Ant-Man movie. That is awful. I mean, bad. Honestly, that's devastating on so many levels. Not just because it's the third movie in, you know, the Ant-Man films, and they didn't ever make that much money to begin with. But I think what makes it so much more of like a I would even say kind of a punch in the balls to Kevin Feige, honestly, if we're going to picture it in our minds, is this wasn't really sold as an Ant-Man movie. This was sold as an MCU film with the next big Thanos, your Kang. This was a Kang film, really, at the end of the day. This is how it was sold. And for it to be one of the least grossing films in the history of over 30 movies that the MCU has done, that is devastating.
Yeah.
Shocking too.
This was supposed to be, remember, they're an Avengers level movie, as it was called. Yeah. And again, especially with Marvel, I'm gonna be honest, I don't see that shit being turned around.
Well, now we're going to disassociate the Marvel from the rest of the stuff, because the other stuff is, there are other reasons for what's happening with those individual properties. With Marvel, and I had some other things I wanted to say about Marvel, because that's kind of, I don't see how. And it also, I don't, because of how they have been, and the mess that they found themselves in, and with all of the stuff that has already been announced and is in, development and in some stage of production, something is going to have to give, because the talking point that, is being, disseminated through the trades is that going forward, they're going to be much more particular with what gets greenlit, with who or what characters get, movies or shows. And then also the overall output is going to be diminished. And I feel like at some point it's going to be, confirmed that they're only going to stick to 2 movies and 2 shows a year going forward. But with all of the stuff that has already been said is going to be made, there's already been rumors of like Secret Wars being delayed or pushed back, because wait a minute, if you stick to that premise of 2 movies and 2 shows a year with all of the stuff that you already have up in the air, you're not going to make that date. No. Unless you start canceling some projects before they're even made.
They should. I mean, there's so much shit where it's just like, this doesn't need to happen. This doesn't need to be made. And we've talked about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they should have never greenlit a Coven of Chaos. If that's not even the title anymore, is it? Agatha
No, it is.
show.
I think it is now. Well, I think it was before. It was House of Harkness, isn't it? Or now it's Coven of Chaos.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Oh, that's right. Who cares? But like, why would you greenlight an Echo show?
Yeah.
Why an Echo show? Like,
who apparently, from what I've heard, is only there to set up Daredevil.
But why? Why? She wasn't even like a standout character to me in Hawkeye. Like, she was cool. If you're telling me like, hey, we're gonna bring her back in a big way for the Daredevil show, I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. But give her a whole fucking show? And yeah, they have so many things on the board. And the reason I think, okay, like, they're not gonna reach the previous heights. Honestly, the only thing that could maybe do it is the X-Men when they eventually get around to it, because the X-Men are just so fucking beloved. People love the X-Men.
Yeah.
Like, they love the X-Men. But they're really shooting their nostalgia wall. Like, they're gonna have nothing left in the tank after Secret Wars, right? Like,
yeah.
After that, that's
which is
done.
well, you and I were saying this the day that was announced back at Comic-Con last year.
Yeah. After that, you kind of have to actually make interesting film.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, what? This is a character from your childhood.
No, I personally think, I don't know, it feels, it comes across anyway. Kevin Feige might be a little bit rattled, and even if he's not, I don't know what it'll take, but here's the thing. The next few films, Guardians 3 notwithstanding, I don't think are going to fare much better than Ant-Man because of where we've been. And we've gone at length. Go look at our previous, I did a couple of episodes with Alexis and David. We go into the full context for why the MCU is where it is. And you and I, Peter, have discussed it for years. But looking forward as to like what is next and what is, like, even the announcements that have been made this week, I think is only indicative of like their absolute refusal to change their formula or do anything different, because I think it's fair to say, Peter, particularly because right now they're about to start shooting the Daredevil Born Again series. And there's been a lot of hullabaloo this past week with casting choices. And I have to say, my initial impression is he chose violence. He chose violence because of, well, who's included and who's not. And this actually kind of brings us into a place where, if I recall correctly, you and I were of the mind that when it comes to Daredevil and this new iteration of it, as well as any other, let's say, characters and properties that he decides to utilize from Marvel Television, you know, S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Defenders or all those things. You and I were of the mind that if he were to do that, bring those characters into the fold, he would not do anything to outright contradict, erase, or, you know, alter that which, you know, let's say for whatever characters you want to say. Like, for example, this week it was announced that there was no reason, but for this new iteration of Daredevil, they're not going to use the characters Karen Page or Foggy Nelson, which that in and of itself is a big red flag, but they're not going to use those characters at all. And you could still say, well, at least they're not going to recast those, but maybe they might now, because that was never outright said that they wouldn't recast those characters. And what also came to light was, okay, John Bernthal's Punisher was confirmed to be coming back, but, you know, Foggy and Nelson are not coming back, but they're going to use the Vanessa character, but it's not going to be the same actress as was in the show. And I don't know what we thought was going to happen. It kind of felt like it was inevitable, but I don't know if the people like Feige were well aware of how this is going to come across. But this seems overall like it's going to be every bit the disaster we thought it would be. And not for the reasons that you think, for those of you listening. I don't think, because they're not using this character, or they're not using this actor, it means it's going to be bad. No, you idiots. Look at what matters most. Creative direction, writing, and then overall, the history of who these people are, the people that are making this show. I never understood. And I think maybe fans are beginning to catch on now, as you've been saying now with Star Wars and with Marvel. It's like they get so distracted with the big show of it all that they can't bring themselves to think critically. Wait a minute, but it's not going to at all feature the main reasons for why I love, let's just say, Daredevil in the first place. You're not going to have Karen Page or Foggy Nelson in your Daredevil show?
But see, that's the thing. That's part of what's kind of, I've noticed, if anything that's made Marvel films worse, it's their complete abandonment of non-powered characters, right?
Mm-hmm. The human aspect.
The very literal human aspect of what makes these films and these larger-than-life characters interesting. If everyone on screen is larger than life, then no one is. And what really helps sell these characters is their relationships to everyday normal people. And again, if you go and look at the earlier MCU films, you really got a lot of that. And that really made you fall in love with these larger-than-life characters. But now, they don't do that. Everything is just a team-up to the biggest thing in the world, and they're losing sight of that human aspect. And yeah, it didn't surprise me that they're bringing back all the powered characters, but it's like, but what about the human characters that make these relationships and these stories work? What about them,
I mean, Vanessa will be there. It'll be a different Vanessa, and
that's
I think
that's also such a weird choice. Like,
right.
Just get the same actress.
And I saw some people that were saying, well, perhaps she wasn't available. Okay, let's say that's the case. Well, what about Elektra? What about those rumors that Elektra is going to be recast? Then it's not so much an availability issue, it's a creative direction. I don't understand this at this point, honestly. Like, for me, I'm of the mind, well, either do it all or don't do it at all. And as far as casting with this show, this is just the issue that Marvel is. Like, they're just like wishy-washy. And I don't understand what Kevin thinks is going to happen, right? Like, I don't like the reaction that, and the anger, quite frankly, that we saw already on social media is not going to get any better. I think especially as you said, when the show comes out, and inevitably it is nowhere near the quality that the Netflix show was.
That's going to cause issues, right? Because that's the thing. You don't want to. So far, Marvel has been lucky to not have to one-to-one compare previous outings. They've kind of dipped their toe into that with like Spider-Man. But they're going to do that in a big way here, right? Because this is literally the same quote-unquote characters, actors, the same thing, except now it's MCU. So it invites a lot of like direct comparisons.
Especially now that it's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, that you kind of, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't want, right? Why would I want to directly compare? It's almost like if you made a sequel to Citizen Kane. It's like, you want those comparisons? Or a remake, continuation, whatever. Like, ugh. Like, no one wants that. It's gonna be very hard to make people happy, I think.
Yeah, it also doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how are you not going to have those human elements, especially since this is going to be longer than any previous season of Daredevil was on TV?
But that's what it feels like. I feel like they're trying to, whenever they're lacking in that way, they try to similar to Star Wars, overcompensate with, oh, look at this other character that looks cool and you remember, and they're going to do cool things on screen. And
also, I mean, other rumors that we've heard, and I don't know how much credence there is, although it's not coming from one source, and it's rumors that I heard from almost a year ago at this point, but the idea that Shang-Chi 2 is going to be a time travel movie with this whole, like, what is being billed as an Asian superhero team up with apparently Quake being involved some way, somehow. A lot of those things that I just had to kind of roll my eyes, quite frankly. But I mean, I guess the one thing that makes me feel those are true, that's what you just said. They're just making everything a team up.
Why wouldn't you make the Avengers movie that?
Right.
That's the most, like... Wouldn't that be, like, the most perfect thing?
It's a lot of easy mistakes, too. Like, why? Also, that movie is supposed to feature Kang. Why are you having that character out too many times? Also, why did you also have him in Ant-Man and lose to Ant-Man? These are not things that are helping out in your corner. But I feel like what connects all of this to all the problems that are happening with Marvel, whether it be Marvels and Captain America having issues with production, whether it be with, Kang being overexposed, it's the writing. And one of the things that's uniting all of these issues, Peter, is it seems now that fans are catching on and are kind of like begging Kevin Feige, like, dude, all the people you're hiring to write your projects are the wrong people and the worst people.
Well, because, again, everything changed when he went from hiring really talented people where I'm like, oh wow, like, yeah, they could really fit here. This project really suits them. They can make it fit here. Like hiring Kevin Branagh for
Thor.
make a Thor movie, or Joe Johnston for Captain America movie. And yeah, even Jon Favreau, he was actually a well-established director at that point for Iron Man. And even an inspired choice with what's his name?
James Gunn.
Well, I was actually going to say, what's his name for
Joss Whedon?
Joss Whedon,
yeah.
Yeah, because again, he directed Firefly. He had his whole shit.
Joss Whedon is a great filmmaker. He's a great writer.
Yeah, he had all that shit under his belt, right? But then somewhere deep within Phase 2, he started this whole thing of
post-Edgar Wright drama.
Yeah, let me hire nobodies so I can just... They can just be I can pseudo direct everything, basically.
And I guess maybe the it worked out for him in terms of like
once.
With who? The
With
community
the
directors?
Yeah.
The community directors. They were just known for directing episodes of Community. And then it worked out really nice. And honestly, I don't even know what's there, because for me, these last few years, it kind of feels like an Emperor Has No Clothes, because all the films the Russos have made post MCU have been awful. They've been terrible. Yeah. Honestly, they've been awful movies. And so what was it? If it wasn't them that made those films work, and if it wasn't Feige, was it Marcus and McFeely? Or what happened with those movies that they worked somehow?
Like it was a combination that just kind of worked, right? Because for one, and I've always argued this, their movies are ugly.
Yeah,
it only looked okay in
with Winter Soldier. It made some sense with the character. Well, the arc, I guess, in that movie. Yeah,
and they can make good action, right? Or pretty good action.
I mean, I know I love The Winter Soldier. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's solidly in my top 5. But the action is amazing in The Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
it is genuinely amazing. But go ahead.
So I think it's some that weird combination of Kevin Feige's oversight with the writer, those specific writers, intertwined with their know-how when it comes to.
So you're saying basically like they kind of like filled each other's weaknesses.
Yes. Now there were still gaps that were never filled. Like I said, looks ugly, but it was enough to where. Once you throw in that MCU curve, oof, it's golden, right? Because I can look at, like, I'll put it this way. If Civil War wasn't a superhero movie, would I love it as much?
Also, it's because, like, they were TV writers, right? They worked in TV primarily. They're episodic writers, and I think that's what they were, right? Ultimately, Endgame is a TV series finale, which is why it's so good, in parts, particularly the finale.
Yeah, and they work, especially once you get into like Infinity War and Civil War and Endgame. Yeah, it really leans into the TV stuff, and
all that, it makes me just like question, like, okay, like, how did they make, particularly in my view, Winter Soldier so good when all their post MCU stuff is just like, wow. Like, I mean, if you haven't seen Cherry, that is one of the most unwatchable movies I've ever seen in my life. I think I called Cherry the worst movie of 2021. And I didn't even bother watching The Gray Man because it hurt my heart too much. The idea that you could have Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling in a movie and then that just be crap. So I just kind of stick away from the Russos now. But it's
you know what I think it is too? I think at this moment, I don't think he realized. Maybe he is high on his own supply, right?
Kevin?
But I really think like he's like, yeah, I'll just find another couple Russos, right? And I think he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing. But I don't think he realized he got really lucky the first time with the combination of people he chose and directors. And I think he thought like, oh, I have a talent for choosing these people. You don't.
Not anymore, at least.
You got lucky. I'm talking about like that because that he got lucky because that was the only real pick, except
that
maybe
worked out.
James Gunn.
Yeah,
no, but James Gunn had like a good, smaller movies, but he was like a known director, right? Mm-hmm. And then he kind of, Scott Derrickson for the first, but it just got to the point where he wasn't. It's like I want people that just finished their first home movie, basically. Mm-hmm. Like he started looking for those people. Just you will never have any idea who they are. And then the same thing with the writers. He really felt, I don't know, I really think it went to his head. Like, yeah, like I know best for all this. I'm gonna have everything covered. I'm not gonna hire super talented people. I'm just gonna hire the people that can hold the camera and write exactly what I want them to write.
And won't fight me.
And they won't fight me. They'll just do it because they're lucky to have this job. And yeah, this is how you get fucked over. Because again, he tried to do that with Phase 4 because he literally picked the only semi-successful project from Phase 4, which was Loki and WandaVision and Shang-Chi. These are the people he went to go like, okay, you're gonna write Secret Wars, and you're gonna direct it, and then you are also gonna whoever was the one who directed Shang-Chi, you're gonna direct Avengers Kang Dynasty. You could tell he's just like, okay, well, of all the newbies I just threw at the wall, which are the ones that stuck the best? These guys, okay, you're gonna take the big stuff. And again, that worked
because he got lucky.
He got lucky the first time.
Yeah, there really wasn't all that. And I think this conversation we're just having right now really flies in the face of 10 years of people claiming Kevin Feige was this untouchable god and that the success of the MCU is because he was a mastermind that had this plotted out a decade before it even hit off the ground. What a bunch of bullshit that was.
But those same people still aren't criticizing him.
No, they
it's insane.
They refuse.
It
can't possibly be his fault, right?
No,
that's the mentality they take and everything.
It was Chapek. He somehow...
It was the Rick and Morty writers. That was the problem.
Hired them.
Right? Who fucking hired these people?
Who put them on Avengers? And that's the thing, yeah, hired these small-time TV writers, again, with, like, hire a fucking really well, career-wise screenwriter. Someone who really knows what the fuck they're doing. I don't know.
I thought it was particularly shocking, of all people in the entertainment business, for for Bob Iger to say this past week that perhaps there are some characters in Marvel that don't need sequels. Throwing shade very clearly at Ant-Man and the disappointment in Ant-Man. And the idea that Bob Iger, the king of sequels, to say, you know what? Maybe we don't need sequels. It's like, what? The guy just like literally greenlit Toy Story 5. And he's just like saying at Marvel, you know what? Maybe you don't need sequels for all your characters. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's awful. And we'll see how Secret Invasion turns out. That, I should also say, people, if you're not aware of, that was a show that was delayed because they didn't like it after they shot it, and they hired people to rewrite it and reshoot it again.
It seems like that's the story for everything they put out nowadays.
Which is why Marvel's is being delayed, which is why Captain America, we're having issues with that movie. So it's the story of all of the projects. If all of your productions are having these same issues, hey, maybe the problem is you.
Yeah. And before, people were like, well, come on now, like don't act like that. All movies go through reshoots. Not like this.
Not when you have to rewrite the whole thing after it's in the can.
Yeah, did that happen to Guardians 3?
No.
Nope. That script was locked
and
loaded.
I haven't heard a peep of Guardians 3. There was no issues there.
Like a perfect shoot. It was complete. The script was completely finished well before filming. They filmed it. Maybe they did a couple of pickup reshoots like a few months later, and that was it. They had their movie on the page before they ever stepped in front of a camera. And that just doesn't happen with anything else. And again, that's why, I don't care whatever anyone says or feels about James Gunn. At the very least, I feel like you would have to say or admit that the mentality that he wants to bring to it of, we are not going to greenlight a film until we got that script done, pitch perfect. We're not doing anything until that's done. That's beautiful.
While also maintaining a sense, that they're very much open to the creatives being involved in the direction of the individual films, and that they should feel tonally different while existing in the same kind of tapestry. That's key. That's something that, at one point we thought Marvel used to have, but now they no longer wish to have that. Maybe they never actually did in the first place. But I think what you just said there is kind of like the other element in here, which is so much, maybe perhaps why, or what contributed to Marvel being so high and mighty in the previous decade, the 2010s, was because they didn't have a competitor. Their only competitor was DC, and they were failing spectacularly for years and years and years, and it just created this vacuum. But now, with DC being led by a man with the sensibilities that you just said, or just spoke to, now they have a worthy challenger. Now they have a competitor. And that if they're now, even before James Gunn's first official movie, they've already released films of the quality or the caliber like the Batman and the Suicide Squad. And that's the guy that's going to be heading off the next 10 years of DC movies? Ooh.
Yeah.
That's bad for them. It's just all kinds of bad for Marvel.
And apparently The Flash, the greatest film ever made.
I'm curious to see how good it is. I'm very curious to see.
All the claims of
James Gunn says he loves it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, it was confirmed this past week, through the back channels, obviously, or I guess through accidents, that he is directing the Superman Legacy movie.
I think that was always obvious.
Yeah.
I think they're waiting.
If he's writing it, how is he not directing it, is my view.
I think they're waiting to have this whole thing of I don't know where or how, but official announcements of
Comic-Con would be the place you think, right?
This is the cast, and this is who's directing it. And also this is who's gonna direct the Batman. And give some concrete stuff, I think.
I have to think that DC's gonna have some things to show. It hasn't been announced. Maybe we're too far away from it, but it's only around the corner. I have to think they're gonna have some big things to say this year.
If they go to Comic-Con, I think that's where you're gonna get stuff like that.
So that's where we're at right now with the mass entertainment situation. So real quick before we move off, are you surprised that it looks like Kevin Feige is not going to recast certain characters? With Elektra and with Vanessa. So I guess that means, or
he's
not really.
Going after the fan favorites, and then everyone else
falls by the wayside.
But it sucks because it's Again, there's a reason there was an uproar over Foggy and Karen. It's because those are great actors and they were great roles and they filled them perfectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, again, it's sort of this like surface level interpretation of what makes something good, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, everyone loved Daredevil. I'll just grab, what's his name? And he'll play Daredevil again. And it's like,
John
okay.
Bernthal. I mean, or Matt Murdock. Or
Matt Murdock.
Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox.
So many names.
And it's like, yeah, Charlie Cox is great. And he's great in the role. And he is a big part of why people like Daredevil. But there's a lot of real other elements that made that possible, that made it such a good show. And Karen and Foggy were a big part of it with those specific actors. And honestly, there's just no reason to recast. I think that's the biggest thing to me. It's like the easiest thing in the world. Believe me, they're not going to come with high paychecks, right?
Yeah, there's no reason to recast, and it makes it look kind of scummy of him to like, hey, you're not invited back to this.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine right now how they feel? Karen and Foggy, the actors?
That sucks. I feel bad for Karen Page because I know she really wanted to come back. And she should. She's great. Oh my god.
Anywho, as far as Star Wars is concerned, I don't know where that is going to go off in the future. I guess David Lindelof is going to have a movie going to be announced pretty soon in the next few weeks. Is that the name I'm hearing? I'm hearing that Lindelof is working on a Star Wars film, and that's the next theatrical one.
I'm going to assume that's what it is. Especially
because they already announced that Kevin Feige's movie, which I don't think was ever happening, and what's her name, Patty Jenkins, that those movies are canceled basically.
You know what I think? I this is funny to me, but if I were to guess, I think Chapek forced that Kevin Feige Star Wars movie onto Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh, I see.
Because he's like, Marvel is knocking it out of the park. Let me see if he can come in. And
are you sure that didn't predate Chapek? Because Chapek was only here for 2 years.
Bob Iger. Maybe it was Bob Iger. Either way, I think that's what happened. Whoever was in charge was like, this guy's knocking it out of the park with Marvel. Let's give
Why not just do Star Wars? At the same time, you're making him like double his output with making TV shows, which I'm still saying you should have kept Marvel TV, just put different people on it and let that wing do the TV shows. Why? And I'm just like screaming here. Why is no one pointing it out that Feige should have just had a whole different division to do TV shows? Yeah. Not like double his time and then to do a Star Wars film. But what you're saying is, well, if Iger put that movie on Feige, is it now not Iger himself that's saying,
well,
yoink?
I don't think he put it on Feige. I think Feige was happy to do it. I think he put it on Kathleen. And then I think now that he came back and his whole thing is like, oh, he's kind of changing things up and letting these people kind of make their own decisions, these heads of these departments a little bit. I think one of the first things Kathleen was like, okay, if you're letting us choose, get this shit out of here, right? like I'm in charge. And yeah, I think they're gonna go with the David Lindelof Star Wars, whatever that is.
I don't know what that is. Yeah,
from what I've heard, it takes place after the Rise of Skywalker, and it might even include Daisy Ridley. But like,
it still feels too soon for that.
But that's the thing. I don't think she would be the main character. Like, it wouldn't be in Episode 10. It would be its own thing that just so happens to take, I guess, somewhat similar to The Mandalorian, right? Because you know how Luke shows up and stuff like that. Maybe they're trying to do something similar, but like through film.
I just feel like the obvious answer is to, in the film side, do something completely removed from what you're doing on TV, which is on TV. With Favreau's approach, all you're doing is trying to copycat what Marvel is, and it already isn't working out to the extent you thought it would be. So, but if you want a fan favorite, it just feels like Knights of the Old Republic has the name, it has the fans of it. It's so removed. It's before any of the films. Why not just do that? That just seems like an easy thing to do.
I'm gonna tell you first what I would want, and I would hate that. So I would not want that.
What, Knights of the Old Republic?
Yeah.
Because I don't really
But
know
two,
too much of it. I'm just saying
it's
this.
just annoying.
Okay.
But two, you're right. That's the easy move to like knock. To me, that's a layup.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially if I was in Kathleen's Kennedy, I would probably pull that trigger. Like, people love Knights of the Old Republic. It's new to audiences, but fans are crazy about it, and it puts us in an era where we could do whatever the fuck we want. From a business perspective, it's kind of a layup. But from a me perspective, fuck that. I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, depending on what it is, I could be interested in like a post. What do you call it?
Episode 9.
Episode 9 film, a story that takes place post episode 9 that is not connected to those characters, but they maybe show up in them.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. That could be interesting, right? Because I'd have to imagine it's not going to be stormtroopers and fuck, dude. If I see stormtroopers, I'm out. Like,
I know, I'm done. Or Tatooine, basically,
or Tatooine.
Because they are. I know that there've been discussions, and I think they're seriously pursuing more seasons of Obi-Wan. Why not just do the next season of Obi-Wan as a movie?
The first one should have been a movie.
It should have been.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
I really feel like they're fucking up things that should be movies and things that should be TV shows.
Right, yeah.
Even at Marvel, too.
No, yeah.
Because, what's it called? Hawkeye could have been a really awesome, under $100 million little MCU film, right? Because it's like, you need those human films where not the whole world is an ending, where we can just connect with these characters. That would have been perfect. Because there was not enough meat on those bones for like 6 episodes, but it could have been a nice, 90-minute MCU film, especially around Christmas. Knock it out of the park.
I still think the idea of Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo is worth pursuing as a TV series.
That shouldn't have been a movie. That should have been a TV show, right? That would have been great.
But I think with the success of Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor as that character still sells. That also seems like a layup too. Well, I mean, the thing is, I don't think we need more Obi-Wan, but they're already pursuing more stories with Obi-Wan. I think they have a story with Qui-Gon, and if they're going to do that anyway, just do a movie.
You know what I would do? I would go back to the Clone Wars and do a movie.
Oh my
But
God.
not with Obi-Wan, not with Anakin, not with Yoda, not with any characters that you know. It's just have it be set during that time. Have it be about like a certain Jedi on a mission, right? Sure. And it's just that time period. And
I still say, I know you're not going in this direction. I still say, I am surprised that there was nothing at all in development with Asajj Ventress. And I'm still surprised that while we have almost the entirety of the Clone Wars in the animated form, the one thing we don't have is resolution to her character. Even though she dies, technically speaking, in the novel, Dark Disciple, it was based off 8 episodes of the Clone Wars, written by Katie Lucas originally. I'm surprised there's just no appetite to animate those episodes.
I mean, I get it. I agree. But I don't, because you're the only Asajj Ventress super fan in the world.
I don't think that's true. I'm going to push back on that. I think that character...
Push all you want. It ain't getting made.
Well, sure, whatever. And you can push all you want on Brendan Fraser, and that may not happen either. But
wow. See? You just have to go
no,
for the
if you're going to shoot across the bow, I'm going to shoot right back, okay?
Okay.
And you know what? You can say all you want about, Creed not getting an Oscar for Sylvester Stallone. And while I agree with you, that was robbery. Hey... Bridge of Spies is an Academy Award-winning film. Fuck all of you. Anyway, you want to go there? I'm going to go right back to you. Here's the thing. With people rediscovering the Clone Wars series and Ventress not getting any kind of resolution, because right now I'm actually like rewatching the series with this reaction channel, The Normies, and they've just finished watching season 5, but I can't help but wonder, are they not aware of the fact that there are 2 big stories with Maul? Remember, there was this thing with Maul having a confrontation with Sidious involving Mother Talzin. That was a comic book but it should have been a series. I mean, an episodes, and then there was the novel with Dr. Disciple. So I'm just saying, universe, please, fingers crossed, please. You've given me some amazing things over the years. Can we just get that in return, please? Thank you. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but I just, I'm not going to stop saying about it. But as far as Star Wars, it is quite surprising. The Mandalorian is just like, it also feels deliberately like they're kind of like slowing their roll and they're like stretching out the story, which, is not going to do them any favors with that show.
It though? Because from what I heard in the second episode, he already went back to Mandalore, and he saw, I guess that was the big thing, the Malachor is alive. And it's like, people are like, oh my god. And it's like, of course it is.
Malachor is a planet. I'm sorry, I couldn't correct you on that. No, the dragon or whatever creature that the ancient Mandalorians used to ride on is there. Malachor is a planet that was.
Sure? I saw people calling it. I don't know.
No, it starts with an M. Malachor is the planet they go to in Twilight of the Apprentice, Star Wars Rebels.
Okay.
With the weapon.
But I guess my point is, it's like, yeah.
Did you see, by the way, that the Zillo Beast came back?
Yeah, what was it, in the Bad Batch or something?
That was actually a cool episode. They had like an alien reference, the whole first part. It was good. But that was funny to see.
But I guess my thing is like, I saw the Book of Boba Fett. And of course, they ended it with Boba Fett riding a Rancor. No real build up, or it's not really deserved, but they did it.
Because Boba Fett's first appearance in anything Star Wars was in the Star Wars Holiday Special, which featured him riding something, right?
Well, it's mostly because the big thing is Return of the Jedi, Boba Fett, Rancor, la 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 la. Anyway, he's riding the Rancor, and it's like, it's supposed to, you could tell this was supposed to be this massive Star Wars moment to them, and it's like, no one remembers, no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Because and maybe people are gonna freak out when they say it this time, but it's like, yeah, sure, I know it's coming. I don't care.
Well, don't forget how bad it was when they killed Cad Bane, and how they staked that whole relationship based on unproduced episodes of the Clone Wars.
That's what I mean. Like, they literally introduce him at the last minute, like the very last episode. I guess you could say like the tail end of the second to last episode. But imagine you've only seen the Star Wars movies, and then you watch The Mandalorian, and you're like, oh, I kind of like this. The Mandalorian, I mean, and then you watch Book of Boba Fett, and you're like, who the fuck is this guy?
Who are these people?
What's going on? Is there any basic storytelling? Like, we had a whole season of flashbacks to him doing shit with the Sand People, and why was it done? I don't know. What was the point? I don't know. It's the same thing with the Mandalorian. They keep going back again and again. They go back to that one lady on Tatooine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. I was like, really? We're back here again?
Why?
Amy Sedaris' character.
Yeah, I love Amy Sedaris.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about her in Star Wars.
Yeah, but why do we keep coming back to her?
Why do we keep coming back to her? Like, the show is treating her like she's this, like, big thing.
Like Phil Coulson or something.
Yeah, and it's like, she was a cute little guest spot once.
Remember how she was, like, basically, like, she was there the whole finale of Boba Fett. Like, in the action.
Yeah. Why is Amy Sedaris the linchpin of Star Wars right now? Amy Sedaris is a funnier character than we've had before. If we can make her work. I just don't care. I guess that's the thing that makes it suck, right? Because it's just not even interesting in a bad way. Mm-hmm. It's just uninteresting. Like I haven't seen Ant-Man 3.
You don't need to.
And I don't care.
No, I
just know there's just nothing.
And then you look at Andor and you're like, how did we get that? How did we get that show?
I'm so glad that they decided ahead of time we'll just do 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would have gotten a third. So it's like, thank God. Like, it's they got everything already.
I was happy that they were filming before the first season was even finished, I think, airing or something. By the way, not to throw some not so subtle shade out there, but evidently Kyle all of a sudden decided to watch this show like 5 months too late, and like he kept messaging us, and I don't know if you noticed, but I was like, I ignored it completely.
I knew you were going to.
But you know why? Because I'm like, you know what? Fuck you.
Fuck you for taking 5 months to get to Andor and then ignoring me these past 5 months when I told you to watch Andor.
Yeah.
I know you.
I didn't acknowledge its existence. I was like, oh, okay. Sure. I mean, it's great, but it's like, dude, you should have been there with us while we were watching it together. That's when you're supposed to see it. It was a fucking ride. Seriously.
Plus, that's how good shit gets made. You gotta watch it when it's coming out. It sucks, but yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be curious to see what the future holds, particularly for these franchises, but I think it's just something to note that the fans on both ends of the situation, as far as Disney as a whole, is all at once falling apart.
Yeah. And I'm excited not because I want things to be bad. Of course, I want everything to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But when a top dog gets dethroned, everyone comes out of the woodwork to try and challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you get interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get people really, really going for it.
Well, Disney's being challenged in a way they never thought they would in terms of like James Gunn's up and coming DC projects. I think they're going to hit hard. Also, Universal, the success of Puss in Boots has been just overwhelming.
Did you see the trailer for that new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie?
No, I didn't. But I know it was there.
I'm not the biggest. I know the Turtles. I'm not the biggest Turtles fan. After seeing that trailer, I got so excited.
Wow.
It looks so good. The animation is crazy.
I need to check it out then. So it got good reception then.
Yeah.
Who's making that? Do you know what animation studio is doing that movie?
Produced by Seth Rogen, a Nickelodeon movie.
Okay, sure. I mean, they make some good films sometimes, but you know what? What the overall point is, between how great Puss in Boots is doing, and then of course later on this year we have Into the Spider-Verse, or Across the Spider-Verse, and then also Super Mario Brothers from different animation studios. Combine that with the failures of Lightyear and Strange World is like, ooh.
Yeah.
What's happening? Disney Animation is being fucking kicked to the curb from all the other competitors? That's never happened to that extent before.
Again, it's a 90s flashback. Or no, more 2000s flashback.
Yeah, the 2000s for sure. Because they ruled in the 90s.
Because, DreamWorks and Blue Sky came in and they really... And even Pixar, right?
Yeah.
Disney was only kept alive on life support because of Pixar. When it came to animation. But no, that's true. Like, I mean, I hate to say it, the Mario movie looks
amazing.
It looks pretty darn good. Like,
it looks amazing, honestly. Yeah,
and that kills me because I hate Illumination.
Yeah,
but you know what? They really got their ass in gear for this movie because the animation looks really good. And you know what? As a lifelong Mario fan, it's very Mario-tastic, very Nintendo.
It's coming out next month.
Damn. And that's the thing. There's a lot of movies that are coming out, and I'm like, man, I really want to see that. And again, it's not the typical Disney stuff, and it's stuff that, as of so far this year, they're making money, right? It's the kind of stuff that I didn't think would make money anymore. Like, did you see that trailer for that? Not Scarlett Johansson. Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh my god, I loved it. I don't know about you, but
I thought it was hilarious.
I love that trailer, and it's the kind of movie we haven't seen in, I feel like, 10 years.
You're gonna break down right now emotionally.
Because it comes actually because there's a little known comedy that was really good back in 2019 that starred Jacob Tremblay called Good Boys. That was such a good comedy. Nobody I think saw it, but it's the same director doing this one. It looks amazing. And you're so right. Between this and films like Megan and Cocaine Bear and Creed and Scream, and then also I believe even the new Adam Driver's dinosaur space movie is making some money. Like, look, films are back, and they're making money in ways that we just didn't think would come back. Because when
variety,
let's rewind back to the last half of 2022. All the awards films, they crapped out. They made nothing. And so now all of a sudden you have these movies that are just being sold on the concepts themselves. And so there's just a lot of healthy competition in the way that it just didn't exist in the previous years. And so perhaps now what we're seeing is, dare I say, look at timing is everything. Timing is everything. All at once, while the streaming movie, the streaming platform, it's just not, the money isn't there, and we're seeing it now. Theatricality is coming back. Wow.
It's really kind of turning back the clock, that shit.
Right. It's like an alignment, a realignment.
It's a lot of things that are kind of hitting at the same time. And like I laughed my ass off at that trailer. Like at the very
I loved it.
At the very end when he punched her in the throat.
Yeah.
She's like, we gotta get out of here.
But you know what also looks great this year is Barbie.
That's right, Barbie. And again, like the movies we're talking about, it's not like they're like these tiny indie art house films, right? We're talking about fucking Creed 3.
Yeah.
Talking about
I don't know if you saw
Barbie.
it. That's great. It's great. Creed 3 is great.
I haven't seen it. I don't I'm hoping I can make time. The one I want to see is Shazam 2.
Oh yeah, I forgot that's even coming out
next. That's why I want.
Oh my
see
god,
it in
really?
the
It's next week?
Yeah.
Oh man. Oops, I forgot about it.
But that's why I want to see it in the theater, because it's like I really liked the first one. I really like the director, and it's like if I'm here bitching about comic book movies, I should support the kind of ones I want them to make.
Right.
Anyway. But yeah.
What was it, the last thing here? Yeah, but when the Disney issue, so Star Wars and Marvel and their animation is lacking. Pixar is not even on the board because they took it off the board. They've made some great movies, but they took it.
They did that to themselves.
Yes, yeah, they did it to themselves
because they threw them to streaming. What the fuck? Again, Pixar was they kept them alive in the 2000s. And for whatever reason during the pandemic, they just fucking threw them to the wind.
And then I think the final nail in the coffin, I would say, is like there's a big fucking problem here. Let's watch and see how that Little Mermaid movie is received. Because if that doesn't make $1 billion, well,
yeah. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
Before I would have said like it's gonna make $1 billion easy.
Easy.
Now,
yeah, the other ones have been terrible, but now it's being surrounded by everything else not being great.
Yeah, it's surrounded with this era of like we're just kind of tired. It's tired of this kind of stuff. But I don't know. Who knows? People really love The Little Mermaid. People really love the star. What's her name?
Halle Bailey.
Halle Bailey, and I'm sure she's great. But yeah, it's again, it's that same thing of like, we'll see. I think that'll be a really big test to see how much things are changing, right?
Right.
Because I can guarantee you, it's going to be a shit film. Because all of
there's
these
no doubt in that
have been shit. All these live action ones. But all, like you said, all of them make money. Like $1 billion films. So if this one, at least in the eyes of Disney, underperforms, I do think that's a big thing of like, maybe people are kind of tired of this same shtick that they've kind of kicked off in the 2010s. You know, this nostalgia franchise fever dream.
Well, I would just say that that day can't come soon enough. Honestly. Because these live action remakes have been soul crushing, to say the least.
Yep.
We're gonna go ahead and leave that stuff there. Let's just go ahead and transition to the Academy Awards and stuff. And we'll see how this conversation goes, because we're on the precipice of some quite stunning achievement, where a film that, by the way, I believe just hit its 1-year anniversary. I think it debuted at South by Southwest about a year ago. Everything Everywhere All at Once. We're on the precipice of that film becoming the most awarded film of the modern era. It won't be, no matter how many Oscars it'll win, it's not going to be the most, I think, in history, because that record will probably always belong to Return of the King, where it won all 11 of its nominations. And again, that's before the modern era. And what I mean by the modern era is that in 2000, post the Dark Knight, they reorganized the way that they do their voting, and that birthed the preferential ballot, where they rank the films based on like how much they like or don't like them. So we're on the precipice of that, of this Everything Everywhere All at Once becoming the most awarded film of the modern era. And I think because you don't get to have, particularly with above the line stuff, you have movies like Mad Max and Dune and Whiplash that end up getting maybe 5 or 6 Oscars, but they're all tech categories. But in this case, we have, if Everything Everywhere does end up getting 5 or 6, and they're all like in acting and writing and directing and picture, that would be a record. Because I think at most you would have like Parasite, which won 4 for directing, picture, writing, and I believe also international feature. So that's where we're at. And there's a lot to say. There's also a lot to say about the anonymous Oscar ballot interviews, which, oh my God, have they ever been this bad? They're always bad.
They're always bad, yeah.
Holy crap. This year, the things that we read, oh my God, like it is just really eye-opening. And you know what's really funny? Because they're all terrible. They're all saying like wacky, insanely racist and awful takes on movies. They have this like feeling of, do you even like films? And the funniest thing is, they're all voting for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
It really shows you that all voters are the same.
Yes,
because you'll poll.
It's not just like a small number of ones. It's all of them.
But I mean, like, voters in general, because you look at political voters and you'll poll them and you'll ask them questions about who they're voting for and why, and it's the most insane, stupid shit you've ever heard. And it's the same thing here, like, and it's funny because there's like no rhyme or reason to any of it. Like, in one breath someone will say like, I'm tired of the minorities. And then in the next, they're like, I'm voting for Angela Bassett because she's a black woman. Like these these people are insane. Yeah. They're insane. And you're like, okay, like at first it used to make me mad, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, like, you're crazy people. like you don't. I think John Roca have coherent thoughts.
Yeah, John Roca tweeted, I think just today, that the system is broken.
Yeah,
they need to be replaced.
I honestly, like, if I could snap my fingers and be in charge of the Academy, I would revoke like everyone's voting.
You have to just fire everybody and start over.
If anything, I would say, well, this might be difficult. I'd like, well, maybe you can only vote for like your category, right? So like, if you win for costumes, only you can vote for costumes. But then, that question,
which,
like,
you'd think that's how it would already be like, but that's not how it is. They can only, let's say if you're in the costume guild, you can vote they're the only people that get to decide who gets nominated, which that explains to why it may be a little bit gatekeepy with like what films miss out in certain ways.
That's what I mean, because then I thought like, but then it gets real gatekeepy, because it becomes a very much a popularity contest among this.
But it already kind of is in another aspect, because then the whole Academy at large gets to vote on all the categories, on the winners.
Yeah.
So
maybe
it's like,
there
what's
should
the right?
just be an Academy board,
and they pick who wins and who doesn't. Yeah,
it's like a group of like 100 people. I don't know. It's tough, right? I mean, regular democracy hasn't figured this shit out. So
how will we expect like freaking the Oscars to be any better? But like, I mean, seriously, the things that I read this week, you know what? And there are a lot of people that are calling for the trades to not run these articles. No, keep running them. Keep showing everybody how vapid these people are. In my view, I think it also, look, I think it reveals why it was that Parasite won, why Coda won, and why Everything Everywhere is going to win.
Yeah.
It's not the movies. It's not the quality of the films. It's because they're the it girls. They're the popular cast that everybody wants. Oh, it's the story. It's like, it's the moment. It's like they're the popular kids and everybody wants to go at their table and eat at their table and like, and sign autographs and everything. That's why they're winning.
Again, it's that same bullshit of like, who do I want to have a beer with? That's who I'm voting for as president. And it's like, shoot yourself in the face. Like I just hate it. And it's the same thing here. Yeah.
And it kind of like, with the system being that it is, the idea that films like Everything Everywhere and Parasite would every now and then get to, because I, legitimately speaking, I think they're the best films of their given years, and it was a happy accident that they ended up winning Best Picture.
The thing,
I think,
right?
And I know I'm talking about it as if it's already won. I think it will win, but we'll see, right? Like, disaster could happen, and let's say they give it to All Quiet on the Western Front, which would, oh my god, I don't think it's going to happen at this point, because it's Everything Everywhere All at Once. IGN did a calculation. It is the most awarded movie of all time across all of the guilds, all of the precursors, all of the critics groups. The most awarded film of all time, overtaking The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, and the Oscars haven't even happened yet.
And you know what? I think if it loses, I think the only way you could label that is the largest upset in history.
Yeah.
At this point,
yeah.
Yeah.
But I would also argue part of the reason for why the film has been surging is the lack of an alternative competitor.
Yeah. I think there's good movies, but they've all eaten each other, I think.
And good is kind of relative at this point. Like, I mean, films that they would like and that normally would be like winning and stopping over everybody else. And the thing is, it's been too fragmented. You've had films like Fabelmans and Banshees and All Quiet win in other places. I think the real weakness of Everything Everywhere that has been exposed has been all the European voters. BAFTA and Golden Globe, they gave Best Picture to Fabelmans and Banshees and All Quiet. Stateside, it's all been Everything Everywhere. So, but keep in mind, at the Academy, there is a European contingent, and if enough of them place that as number 10, there's an off chance it can still lose. I'm not saying it's a great chance, but there's still a chance.
I knew I hated the British.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
I was so disgusted by what the
BAFTAs were very funny. They just gave all the Europeans awards, and that was it. That was very funny.
Yeah, and I personally was like, maybe we should just like cancel the BAFTAs.
Fuck them.
Yeah, and for petty reasons, because like they blanked Spielberg. Like the only like his movie didn't get. That was the only organization this whole award season that pretty much just like didn't acknowledge that film's existence.
I mean, when they gave All Quiet, when it took home the big award,
Best Picture, yeah,
it's like
it won 7 awards that night.
Yeah,
7 awards.
Very obvious what's going on.
Yeah, and then Banshees ended up winning over Ke Huy Quan. And look, I'm happy Barry got an award, but like that's not going to repeat, and it hasn't repeated anywhere else.
Yeah,
so it's like
it's just so obvious.
It's so obvious, but we're at a point where, look, you'd think that films like Fabelmans or even Banshees or Top Gun, maybe even a contingent of Tar, and then All Quiet, you'd think at some point one would have come up to challenge Everything Everywhere, and one hasn't.
I argue if Elvis wasn't directed by Baz Luhrmann, it might have.
Oh my God.
I think the Baz Luhrmann of it all is what held it back for these people.
You and I are of the mind that given a few more days, Bohemian Rhapsody might have won Best Picture over Green Book a few years back.
Mm-hmm. which is a very disgusting sentence.
I mean, yeah. But in a way, if it really does come down to Everything Everywhere versus All Quiet, you can think of it as a replay of 2019 where it was Parasite v 1917.
That's true. I don't. Oh man. Well, this is the thing. Even if the English all go for like All Quiet, not all of them are.
No.
Right. Because even if every single one of them went for All Quiet, I don't know if that's enough to win it, and not all of them are. So it's like, it's how much of these people want to be a hater towards
Everything Everywhere.
It's how high is the hate, I think. Because not only do you have to be loved, but you have to not be hated.
I think what's surprising is, I've always felt it was going to be Everything Everywhere, and I wasn't entirely confident, but I thought it would because it just feels like a Best Picture winner. It's my idea of a Best Picture winner, but I didn't see any alternative, and it kind of has like played out that way. But still, it's just still shocking to say because it's everything about that movie just screams anti-Oscar, an anti-Oscar voter. And the only thing I can rationalize in my head as to why it's been so successful is because they love the cast and they're, this whole Oscar season is a popularity contest and they want to take pictures with them and they get invested in the speeches and the story. That's the only thing I can rationalize why it's been such a runaway freight train. But like, think about this. Everything Everywhere All at Once is the first film since Birdman to sweep PGA, SAG, and DGA.
But I do think that, and this is where movie reviewers and stuff come in, the movie got a huge amount of love, right?
The
critics. And then that causes...
And the pundits, too.
The critics and the pundits adore the film, which causes the rest of Hollywood to pay attention.
That drives the conversation. And I feel ultimately, a lot of them were thinking Fabelmans because of the kind of movie that it was and because of who made it, that wasn't going to be the main competitor. The problem was that film didn't resonate with the pundits or with the critics in a way that they thought they would be. And I think personally, I'm choosing to view it as it's less about the movie and it's more about the director. I'm beginning to feel like his shtick doesn't vibe anymore with these people.
Or maybe Hollywood doesn't want a story about how divorce hurts their children.
That could be true. That could very well be true. And I think a lot of people were just underwhelmed by the film and him in general. And I mean, in these anonymous Oscar ballots, I mean, there were two individual voters that said, one, the reason why they didn't vote for Spielberg in anything or his movie was because it was too sentimental. That literally verbatim. And then the other one said it was too schmaltzy. That was the reason. And I don't think that's an isolated incident. I think that's kind of what speaks to it. And speaking to some of the other things, I don't want to harp on Fabelmans too much, but I thought it particularly offensive, the things that were being said about the movie. Because there was this one quote from what, I'm going to read between the lines here, a member that's of color. I'm just going to say that because of how they were, reading off everything else. But I thought this just especially unsympathetic and kind of gross, which is what this person said is, my favorite thing I heard, well, no, she is saying like what she heard from. I went to a screening of The Fabelmans at the DGA, and I was sitting there with women of color director friends. That's how she labeled them. And after it ended, I was like, can you imagine if you made a movie about your life trauma? If your biggest trauma of your life was your parents got divorced and your dad's reaction was to buy you a camera? We had to beg, borrow, and steal to get a camera to make a movie. And this bitch just got handed an editing system? Would I have been Spielberg if somebody handed me that? The woman behind me stood up and said, only Steven Spielberg could look at Michelle Williams and say that's a Jewish woman. The Fabelmans was a beautiful science fiction film about straight white male privilege. I understand people of color being resentful of this entire industry and this award season. if not because they're right, they continuously are like excluded year in and year out. And one other comment was which was particularly disgusting, you know, slamming Viola Davis and The Woman King in the same breath as admitting he didn't watch it. So that's true. They're right. But in this context, I just feel like, wait a minute. That's a bit mean to say that Spielberg's trauma is invalid, and like, but that's I can't be unsympathetic toward that.
But that's where I mean, where it's like, oh, they're crazy people, right? Because they will say the most offensive thing you've ever heard in the same breath of like trying to talk about privilege. Right? Yeah, it's like an alien trying to understand progressivism, but they feel very strongly about things that you can tell they haven't given 2 minutes to actually think about.
Brandon Strusing said it, I think what you're saying right here, that retweet. He retweeted that quote, and I think he's saying what you said. This mirrors the conversation I've seen on here from normally progressive people about this movie, and it's always felt gross. Strikes me as pretty insane that we can just decide somebody's trauma is not only invalid, but that they're incapable of processing it correctly.
Yeah. And it's so weird because it's like, we've all admitted that. And I mean, you don't even have to admit it. There's literally been studies done. Like, yeah, living in a household where parents' marriage falls apart and there's divorce can be traumatic, right? Mm-hmm. And it can add lasting stuff, right? So then when someone does a story about it, it's like, oh, you think your upbringing was traumatic? I mean, I thought that's what you believed as well. Like, I don't know. It's so weird. It's like if someone made a movie about being gay and having tough coming out of the closet, and it's like, oh, but you were rich. And it's like, yeah, sure. It can still be traumatic.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to tell you.
I just feel like all of this is like more evidence to me that people just continue to have weird issues with Steven Spielberg. That they throw all this at him. Like, remember Grace's take on The Fabelmans? Saying, like, you know, Steven Spielberg, like, hey, you also got divorced, so how are you here preaching to us about divorced parents? And I just thought, like, that was just so strange to me. Saying that because he got divorced, he has, like, no authority on this story? Which was just, what? I don't get that, personally. But you know what? It wasn't the only issue that was brought up in these ballots. Like, one of the things they come at it from such a snobbish approach. Like, one person was saying Avatar shouldn't have been in the category of production design because it was animation. Another one saying that they don't like animated movies. Some people were saying, like, is Glass Onion really an Oscar movie? I'm sorry, is Coda an Oscar movie? Go, you sit the fuck down. Throwing that kind of, you know, those assertions out there. Like, what is and what isn't an Oscar movie?
But that's what I mean. Like, it's hard to take these people seriously with anything they say.
Like, the ones that women talking? God damn, it should have been a play. I couldn't get into it. It felt like homework. Also, a lot of, I think you really called it, Peter, when we reviewed Tar. Man, a lot of them hated Tar.
I told you, they're going to love the performance, but they're going to be checked out, like, after the first 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes.
But as usual, no, go ahead.
No, that was it.
But as usual, like, what are the films that, these kind of voters that are saying they didn't like Tar, they didn't like Everything Everywhere, what are the films that they did like? Elvis, All Quiet on the Western Front, Top Gun. So, are we underestimating those movies? Could it be one of those three that ends up upsetting? Top Gun. Even if it hasn't won anything else, it hasn't showed up anywhere. It hasn't really won anything.
I know, but it's happened before.
That's true.
Where there's just like there's no
Crash, I believe.
Yeah, there's like no lead up wins for it, and then it just pops up and takes a win at the Oscars. It happens.
I would much, if anything was going to win over Everything Everywhere, I would much prefer Top Gun over All Quiet.
Yeah, All Quiet. It's not a terrible film, but It's just
I
it's
couldn't get
fine.
into it. I couldn't get into it. I was just like, I can see why this would work on people, but like, I think for me personally, I'm just done with war films.
It's a fantastic story.
Mm-hmm.
You like the book, and the original 1930s film, I like it a lot better. But
I need to see that one. I haven't seen the original one yet.
as far as a remake, I just kept thinking of, because that film is all about the horrors of war.
Mm-hmm.
And no film, speaking of Spielberg, since Saving Private Ryan, has really made me feel that.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh, like that true ugliness of war.
Has any movie ever topped that movie as far as a war film is concerned? I don't think so.
Not for me. Yeah. And yes, because I saw this movie and it's like, yeah, that's sad. But on the whole, it feels a little bit too overproduced.
Been there, done that also.
Yeah, and it's like,
you're offering nothing new to the table here.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen this.
Yeah.
And it's good, but like, I'm not going to think about it all that much. So, like, I don't know what else could do it. I'm going to say with Best Picture, it's going to be Everything Everywhere All at Once. Can I ask you, though, speaking of Spielberg, what happened to him? Because I've seen some articles. I think Universal kind of dropped the ball. I think all of a sudden these last 2 weeks, they've been like doing more to promote the movie and him. NBC particularly, because it's Universal, they've been doing interviews on late night television, also on nightly news. They did a little production here and there with him and John Williams about the legacy of him and then also his movie. It seems like a little bit, too late for it. But here's the thing. He's won Best Director in the past. He'll be fine. Like, he's won it for Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. Those are great wins. He should have won, obviously, for those films. They're amazing. And I don't want to get into this discussion of Fabelman's being as good as those movies. That's, I think, kind of irrelevant. It's rather like, how much do they like him or not? And he's been nominated, here and there. I think 10 of his movies have been nominated for Best Picture. That's a lot. I think it's kind of a tying record here and there. What is it about him that just turns people off? Because if this was anybody else that had the same reputation and with the quality of, I'm going to make the argument that if another director had made a Fabelmans, but it was an even lesser film, but if the narrative was, oh, it's their time, they would be steamrolling over this whole season as far as directing is concerned. So, like, why is it that, okay, well, we can give Jane Campion an Oscar, even though her film was whatever, okay, and yeah, she's overdue, whatever. But why is it that every time it's Steven's turn, it's like, well, because you look at it on paper, it's a film about his life. He's a legendary director. The timing is right. This is an era where people are getting their third Oscars. Frances McDormand got a third Oscar. Maybe Cate Blanchett. Well, who knows? So what is it about him that he's just not? He should be on paper steamrolling. And I mean,
honestly, I think it's an oversaturation of him as well.
You think so?
Within the last 10 years, he's put out so many of like the same kinds of films. Everything from like the period piece, 1960s, serious, but uplifting dramas. I think it's a saturation thing.
I don't know if I buy that. I think that plays a role in it somewhere, somehow. But I'm just gonna, from what I'm sensing, I just don't think they like him as much. I think they respect him. I think they like him to an extent, but I don't think they like him that much to where they're gonna actually give him an Oscar this time around.
Yeah,
which is crazy because like if it was anybody else, they would be getting it. So that's where it is. But it seems very likely the Daniels are gonna. I'll just say it right here instead of like wait. Let's just save some time. I don't know. Let's say if you disagree, I'm predicting right now the wins tomorrow for Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's gonna be Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Editing, and Best Supporting Actor. I think it has those 5 locked. Do you disagree?
No, I do think it has this.
Okay, the one that's up in the air, where it could get a 6-1, but I'm hoping to God it is Michelle Yeoh. I think the momentum is with her.
At this point, yeah. I think people... voting was done about a month ago.
Maybe not.
I wouldn't have felt too hot. Now I think it is behind her. I think it's still,
up in the air, because where else is Tar gonna win if not for Cate Blanchett? That's the other issue. But then again, we'll see how much Tar is liked. I'm thinking, I feel that the surge and the wind at the back of Michelle Yeoh's sails is very similar to how Parasite and Coda's was. The love for Michelle Yeoh is just so overwhelming. Even though she hasn't won everywhere, she's won it enough, and it's at the right timing. The timing is great as well. She got that SAG, I think, right as Oscar voting was beginning, so I'm thinking that's going to be hers as well. So that would mean that the movie will win 6. Do you think it could win anywhere else besides those? Like, there's also costumes, there's score, there's song.
Nah, I don't think song.
Not any of those. Okay, so we'll cap it off at 6. 6 Academy Awards, which, again, would make it the most awarded movie of this modern era. That's amazing.
As far as I'm concerned, as long as it gets Best Picture, and Best Actress, then I'm happy. Those two are my go-to. Even director, I don't kind of give a shit about as much.
Right. Because personally, I know I would love Spielberg to win directing, and I would love Martin to win screenplay for The Banshees of Inisherin. That film should also get some things in consideration. Now, the acting stuff. This is where we get into some interesting territory. The two ones that seemingly are most up in the air, supporting actress and best actor. In supporting actress, it's a 3-way race between Kerry Condon from Banshees, Angela Bassett from Black Panther, and Jamie Lee Curtis from Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then an actor, it is a 2-way race between Brendan Fraser from The Whale and Austin Butler from Elvis. What say you? Because I'm not certain about those two.
I feel like it's going to go to Butler.
If I had to put money on it, it would be him, because it's just the easy choice.
It's just exactly the performance that they love.
If they were going to give one for Rami Malek, why not Austin Butler?
If there's one thing I do hate about the Oscars, it's the insane bias they have towards playing a historical figure.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, the level of bias that exists for that. And I really don't like it. But again, it's the Oscar choice.
Yeah, it is. So it seems, and I think what also lends credence to what you're saying, Elvis got 8 nominations, including Best Picture. The Whale got 2, 3, and it didn't get Best Picture. That means they love Elvis, and the big win for Elvis is going to be here. And it
could have been a perfect night.
Yeah, it could have been. What about supporting actress? I'm thinking, I think they're going to give it to Angela.
I think it's going to Angela, especially after reading those what do you call it? Ballots. I think a lot of them are just we'll give it to Angela. It really does come off like that's the thought process, and
it's her time. It's her time.
Yeah,
to do so in a way where it's we're much more motivated because of that narrative, not because we feel that she deserves it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's what we're thinking of. Is there an off chance though that could go to Jamie Lee?
There is an off chance, and again, I think that just comes from a lot of people really loving Jamie Lee in Hollywood.
Yeah, if she wins,
that would be ugly.
If that'll be the 7th win for Everything Everywhere, and think of it this way: if somehow she wins, that would mean that 3 of the 4 acting categories would go to one movie.
There is a world where all 4 would go to one movie.
Right.
I think anyway. But yeah.
But although there's no nominee in
That's
Best
what
Actor.
I mean. Another world.
in the multiverse, basically.
Yeah.
The one that's a question is adapted screenplay. That one is weird because it has Glass Onion. That's not going to win. They'll nominate Rian Johnson, but they won't, I think, vote for him to win. I heard people were thinking it's going to be between All Quiet on the Western Front, and that could be its big award. It could also be Top Gun Maverick, which is nominated for best, and that could be Top Gun Maverick's big award of the night, adapted screenplay. Or it could go to the consolation prize, which would be Women Talking. A lot of people feel like that movie has been so like done dirty that that's the one place it could win, or to award Sarah Polley in particular. So I could see it going there, but I suspect that film is much too weak to win. I'm thinking it's going to go to either All Quiet on the Western Front or Top Gun Maverick. And I'm going to say that if Top Gun Maverick manages to win adapted screenplay, there's going to be a lot of people in real time like saying, oh my God, did Top Gun Maverick win Best Picture? If it pulls that off.
Yeah. It'll be people like start to get antsy halfway through.
But if somehow Women Talking, or as Mark Wahlberg says, Women Are Talking, if that movie ends up winning, I think it's a done deal that neither All Quiet or Maverick are going to win anything as far as Best Picture is concerned. Visual effects, easy. Avatar. There's no question about it. Any thoughts?
No.
Okay, good. What about cinematography? Because the frontrunner was snubbed. Top Gun Maverick was winning the cinematography awards. And it's not in this category. It's Elvis, Tar, Empire of Light, Bardo, and All Quiet.
Honestly, I have no idea. It feels like one of those categories. You know how like when they really love a movie, like Fury Road or something, and they just throw it a lot of fucking awards. It feels like it's gonna be one of those.
Are you of the mind that movie this year will be All Quiet?
No.
You don't think it'll be the tech winner of the night?
Tech winner? No.
So who would it be?
If anything, the Tom Cruise movie, Top Gun.
You think? I think there's a chance Top Gun gets nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, it saved Hollywood and shit. There's some love there for it. I don't know.
I agree, and it's there, but it's just not. It's not materializing.
It's not materializing in wins. Yeah, that's true.
Top Gun did get a lot of the sound precursor awards, and that's why it's either going to be that one or All Quiet in Best Sound. But a lot of people are operating under the assumption that it did so well at BAFTAs, that's going to have some spillover at the Oscars. All Quiet could be a movie where they just could check off the boxes, and it wins categories like cinematography, like sound, maybe even screenplay, which I would say is catastrophic. I also wouldn't count out Elvis. I think if it's going to win actor, it's going to win one other thing.
You know what? Maybe I think Elvis could be that one where they like, so they give him a lot of other awards.
Because Elvis is also in contention for costume and production design. And that's also an interesting category because I've seen some people say that Babylon is the frontrunner for winning that Oscar for production design. And I'm kind of dubious about that. I'm not sure how well liked that movie is in the Academy. It got like what, 2 nominations? 3 nominations? In that category of production design, you have movies like you have Babylon, you have Elvis, The Fabelmans, Avatar, and All Quiet. I suppose there's an off chance that that's the only win Fabelmans can get, but I'm not counting on that. I would say Elvis, maybe All Quiet, and then either Babylon if it gets lucky. But if we're going off like Best Picture nominees and movies that they like, it's going to be Elvis or All Quiet, I would assume. Makeup, there's All Quiet, The Batman, Black Panther, Elvis, and The Whale. Again, Elvis, right? Either Elvis or The Whale here for makeup.
It should really go to The Whale. But The Batman had some good stuff too.
Oh, I know it's deserving here, but who would likely win? It will be Batman.
It should be The Whale.
If it doesn't win here, that might be all she wrote early on.
Yeah,
that Fraser's
I can see
not
The
getting.
Whale just go home with nothing.
It doesn't have very much at stake. Really, it has like 3 nominations.
That's
so
what I mean.
Yeah, very easily. Animated, that's Guillermo del Toro. International film is gonna be, well, it should be RRR, but it's not even in here. It's gonna be All Quiet because that's the easy one. Documentary feature is gonna be Navalny. It's been winning all of those. I'm just like ramming through these. Animated short film is gonna go down, I believe, between 3: The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, or it'll go to, because they always go for titles, My Year of Dicks, and that's a real movie, by the way, or An Ostrich Told Me the World is Fake, and I Think I Believe It. They don't watch these movies; they'll just go based off the title.
Yeah, they're 5.
So it's I think it'll go through all those. This one is an open one. Original score. In theory, Babylon should take it, but again, how much do they like Babylon? The other nominees, Banshees, that probably won't be it. It would be amazing. Everything All at Once would win that one, but I don't think it's that strong. All Quiet, again, if it's the tech winner of the night, All Quiet could just steamroll here. Then there's John Williams, but then again, they're not really crazy about him these days, so I don't see that happening. So there's original score. I think Babylon, though, has a good chance of taking this one. If nothing else, even though like Justin Hurwitz already has that many Oscars, but there's that. Sound we already mentioned. Costumes. People seem to be under the impression that could be Black Panther's one award. If Black Panther ends up winning, though, the costumes, then I could see that being all she wrote for Angela winning for Black Panther and supporting actress. So again, why do I say that? Because, a lot of these movies, they correlate with one other award. It's rare for them to get just one. Maybe Elvis wins for costumes too. I would think there's an off chance there may be Babylon. Who knows? But that's where we're at. If there's one big upset, Peter, what's the big upset you're seeing that you haven't already mentioned?
Well, that's the thing. For me, Best Actor is an upset.
Right.
But beyond that, I think you can get a crazy upset and Best Picture. Like I said, if at this point, if Everything Everywhere doesn't win, that's the greatest upset of all time. I think Oscar history. Further than that, I think you can get an up depending on who wins. Mm-hmm. I think it would be an upset as far as Best Actress. And then specifically with Best Supporting Actress. Best Animated, I don't think anything would really be an upset. I guess technically Pinocchio would be an upset because it cleared everything else. But
Pinocchio. Oh yeah, if it lost, animated. You mean? Yeah, if it lost.
If it lost, yeah. But I love Puss in Boots. Like I wouldn't care. But I don't see anything. Oh, Ki Kwan, if he lost, that would be I think a massive upset. But other than
oh my god, that would hurt.
That would hurt bad.
And hey, it's happened before. Stallone.
Shut your stupid mouth.
You know what would be hilarious? Is if history repeated itself and the front runner and supporting actor lost to the Spielberg nominee. What if Judd Hirsch pulls one out of his ass, 87-year-old, and it wins supporting actor?
At that point, I would be with the rest of Hollywood to end Spielberg's career.
To boycott Spielberg?
Yeah.
Ban him from the... Imagine that happens? Like, because, Spielberg's films usually win one acting award.
Ban him like Will Smith.
Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, and West Side Story won an Acting Academy Award.
Let's not think about it.
It's not going to happen. I mean... Oh, Andrea Riseborough. Oh my god.
Honestly, I would be for it. Because that would be really funny. Like, would people clap? What would I be? And I guess what sucks is that she gave a great performance. She's a great actress. And I think the whole Academy system is fucked anyway. I don't know how what she did was any more fucked than what everyone else does, so... But other than that, for me, it would be an upset if best not soundtrack, score if Babylon lost that. I think I would be pissed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they're literally using Voodoo Mama to sell for the Oscar commercials right now.
That's true.
Come on. You can't do that and then not have it win.
Okay. How bad are they going to mess up Naatu's performance?
Oh, that's going to be embarrassing. That's going to be bad.
Okay. How bad is Jimmy Kimmel going to be?
Very bad. He's going to have some cheesy shit. It's going to be bad.
And also, what disaster is going to happen? Because always something happens that derails it.
Oof.
Because last year it was Will Smith. I know, Will
Those
Smith.
Are very hard. Because
Chadwick Boseman.
No one could have predicted that.
The slap.
That slap. So this year, man, I don't know. Something will happen though.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and leave it there. Thank you all for listening. Catch the Oscars, and then we'll do a show recapping what happens. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.